So much for Wall Street, med school, or the Supreme Court. Many Gen-Zers are swapping an Ivy League degree for trade school and blue-collar work. The number of students enrolled in vocational-focused community colleges rose 16% last year, which is the highest level since the data began being tracked back in 2018, according to the Wall Street Journal. And some are even taking their trade-skilled talents to TikTok and cashing in thousands of dollars from brand deals. The Journal writes, quote, "On TikTok, the hashtag blue collar drew 500,000 posts in the first 4 months of this year, up 64% over the same period in 2023. Posts hashtagged electrician increased 77% over the same time, with construction worker and mechanic posting similar jumps," TikTok says. But they're not only making money on TikTok. Some blue-collar jobs are also paying more. The Journal writes, quote, "Pay for new hires in construction now outstrips pay for new hires in professional services like accounting, according to ADP data." The report comes as the National Center for Education Statistics reports that between 1980 and 2023, the average price of college tuition fees and room and board rose 155%. Meanwhile, the average projected salary in the U.S. for the class of 2024 at the bachelor degree level is $68,000. According to Bankrate, while a master plumber makes median annual pay of $82,000. That's per CNBC. So what do you make of this,
I think
Robby?
that's great.
I think it's good too.
Absolutely. The value of a college degree can certainly be overstated. I mean, it is literally valuable, but if you have to, go massively hundreds of thousands of dollars into debt to get it, my advice to you is don't do that under any circumstances unless you are like a scion of a very wealthy family. Be strategic in what you do. You can get an education more cheaply, and maybe the degree doesn't have the same prestige, but it hardly matters. The prestige of it is certainly overhyped if you are putting yourself into debt. And then the worst are the people who start down that path and then don't actually get the degree, they drop out. The student debt issue is very huge. The skyrocketing cost of education, I'm sure, we disagree on what some of the solutions should be, but it is absolutely a problem. And so I think it is very wise to consider alternative training paths or pathways to careers and jobs. It is the case that learning a trade can be a pathway to a very steady, to a high-paying job, to a middle-class lifestyle. And you have to invest in some of that. That training isn't free either. You have to invest in it, but the certainty of a payout in the end is much higher. And I'm very glad to see it's smart of Gen Z to consider that. Obviously, given the circumstances, they have no choice. The cost of education is just getting absolutely ridiculous. It gets worse every year. That's at elite institutions. That's at public, state-supported institutions as well. So smart of them.
I want to get into some of the cultural aspects of this. I remember being in high school. I went to a public school. I was from a very working class family. My neighbor was a plumber. My dad was a contract worker doing carpentry. None of our parents had college degrees. The painter lived across the street. One of my friends who's from a wealthier background visited the neighborhood and made a joke like, "You guys could just survive on your own." And I'm like, we should really consider that. Thank you. But I think there was this vibe on the school bus of all the working class kids going to school. And there was a bit of a shame about where you got dropped off if it was in one of the lower income neighborhoods and you weren't wearing the Abercrombie and Fitch, the cool clothes, and there was an obvious class divide, and it was uncool to be working class, to be lower middle class. And something shifted towards the end of high school, but really when I was in college. So this is 2017. And it was uncool now to be from money. It was like, oh, you have everything handed to you. That's how you got in here. You must not be very smart. You must be some kind of legacy admin. And it was this cultural shift that suddenly the people who were looked down on were the wealthier students.
I think the hipster trend began a few years before that, Jessica. I'm just gonna
It's
the
I think
you know
it's
the
most
overalls and mustaches and
It was nothing like that.
working class. Well, you are
I was
certainly more hip
conservative
to
at the
what-
time.
Were
I was
you?
like conservative, wearing Sperry shoes, these preppy shoes. I was
Are you
playing.
conservative in your how you present?
No, I was also politically conservative.
Really?
Yeah, I grew up in like a household where my mom was very pull yourself up by your bootstraps. No one gets anything handed to them. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, it's something that I think is good for obviously working class vibes being a good thing, or coming back into fashion is I think a good idea. There's a lot of attempts right now politically to court the working class. Our former contributor or host on Rising sometimes, Batya Ungar-Sargon, has written a book about that I read, and then I did a little kind of discussion of the book with her for C-SPAN, where she went and interviewed and profiled all of these working class people all over the country and showed how really, and some of them very much on the margins of even being able to make, who haven't gotten a lot of training and don't have guaranteed income and have some of them very difficult lives, but talking about how politically diverse they actually are. It's not, a lot of them are interested in the politics of Donald Trump and his kind of cultural pitch to the working class, while many of them disagree with a lot of Republican policies. They have policy preferences that are all over the place. But because they are a kind of gettable vote block, or Republicans are really trying to get working class voters in Pennsylvania and Michigan, which will make all the difference in the election, that will decide the election. I think we talk about them more, even as I know members of the working class still feel very left out of actual policy making and don't think the policies from the top at all reflect their priorities, whether it is immigration or labor standards or all of those things.
Absolutely. So many kids, my age, were told you have to get a college degree if you want to have a job, have a normal, sustainable life.
So bad.
And that's just not true, of course. I went to trade school. I didn't think I was going to go to college. It was the 2008 recession hit, and of course the housing market crashed. My father could build homes for a living, but thanks to Wall Street crashing the housing market, that was no longer a viable thing for him to do, and we almost lost our own house. And I think back to my mom saying, like, college is probably not going to happen, and I was like, I'm never going to make it out of this town. And so I love trade school. Agricultural trade school is like some of the coolest stuff going on in schools in America. I, draw on that education every day being in the FFA. And I think there was just this belief that you had to go to college to do well. And so many of my friends from the trade school are doing better than some of my friends from Brown University. And I think that's beautiful, because it's been talked about so much that skilled labor is better than non-skilled labor. To think that trades and lower paid work is somehow unskilled work has been this fallacy for a few years that I'm happy is changing. And I think also the recession changed people's minds of, we're not doing well economically. It's because we're not that smart, or we're just not working that hard. And I think they realize, actually, no, the economy is rigged pretty hard against working class people in this country. And I think all of these realizations are leading to a force on better policy making, but just companies raising wages to get those blue-collar workers back.
All right, if there's an apocalypse, I want you on my post-apocalypse team, because I'm not very handy, and I can't make the farming equipment work. So you're going to come onto the team and you actually probably kill and eat me, because I'm not of use. But I definitely think you would be helpful in that landscape. More Rising right after this.